He's not with me.
Okay.
He's kind of with me.
But he's still keep it there. All right. A lot of pressure. Not a very flattering shot either.
Your fanny pack looks fantastic. So speaking of Mankind, when you started as Mankind, he was in brown. His clothes were kind of drab.
Yeah.
Music, you had violins. It was a very kind of quiet.
Yeah.
It wasn't very explosive, like you said,
Right.
guys like Shawn Michaels and Undertaker and stuff.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it?
Well, in the beginning, they had this thing at the time, like, Jim wear black, only the Undertaker wears black. And I guess that was true on the day Mr. McMahon spoke those words.
Right.
But within weeks, there were like 4 other guys coming into the company dressed in black. And so I got that like solid like UPS delivery truck brown, you know, head to toe in brown. And they wanted some eerie music, you know, and so Ode to Freud was a little take on it was like kind of like, it was Chopin's Death March with a little bit of extra pep in it, and it was fine when I was a bad guy, but when you make that inevitable switch, especially if you're good enough at being bad, fans will get behind you as a good guy or a babyface. And that's what happened, and WWE didn't have any new music in the pipeline. And so the fans were with me, but I mean, and I'm not taking the reaction that the top superstars get away from them. There's definitely a Pavlovian response. You know, you hear those opening chords to any of the great entrance music, and people want to get excited. And it was just hard to get people excited when my music was going. And so it just happened that a little known event in WWE history, I defeated a very unheralded and today seldom heard from wrestler named Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I came out for my interview the next week on Monday Night Raw, and Jim Johnston had written that great peppy rec music, and it's been with us ever since.
That's great. So if you could go back, just looking back on your entire career of wrestling, if you could pick one match from when you started until you retired, what would be your favorite match?
Oh man, of all the matches I ever had?
Yes, sir.
I would have to go with Randy Orton and me. You think that's a good choice? Backlash, May 2004. And what's really cool about it is, even given all the great matches Randy has had, as far as I know, that's still his favorite as well. So it was really good. I watched it with a family. They had me over. They'd spent a nice sum of money to have me over the house, and we donated the money to a fund for Ashley Massaro's daughter's college education, and they wanted to watch my matches. They wanted to see my favorite, so I played them that one, and I think it still holds up pretty good. Pretty
good. What do you guys think? It was a fantastic match, right?
By the way, anyone realize the Larry David reference there? Curb Your Enthusiasm. I did that in India with Kurt Angle sitting next to me, and not one person got the reference. And I went, worked out pretty good. Pretty. And Kurt goes to me, no one knows what you're talking about. And I said, pretty. He goes, knock it off. And I said, pretty. Stop it, you're embarrassing me. Pretty.
Well, sticking with favorites, who were some of your favorite wrestlers that you ever encountered or used to watch as a child, or just in general, who were some of your favorite people that you've ever seen?
Growing up, I was, we only got WWF at that time, right? So it was like Bruno and Ivan Putski and Chief Jay Strongbow and Ivan Koloff, and then when I got really into wrestling, it was Jimmy Superfly Snuka. But once I got involved in the actual business of wrestling, there was a good friend of mine named Brian Hildebrand, who later went on to referee as Dr. Mark Curtis, and he told me, like, I was having some trouble, like brawling and throwing punches, and he gave me this VHS cassette from Japan, and he wanted me to watch the Funks versus Hanson and Brody. He said it was some of the best brawling you'll ever see. And that tape turned everything around for me, because when I got to see the Funks and Brody and Hanson, like, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. And Dynamite Kid against Tiger Mask was on that same VHS. And so I was like, man, I know I can't brawl like those guys. You know, I know I can't fly and do the technical stuff like Dynamite Kid, but what if I combine those two styles? And so I can consider myself like a hybrid of Dynamite Kid, Brody Funks, and Stan Hansen. And I'd say, looking back, it worked out pretty good. Pretty. Yeah, that was a really, I don't know where I'd be without that VHS tape, but I think it's safe to say I wouldn't be on this stage here. Right here, in this part of Florida.
All right, so I want to move on to WrestleMania. It's generally the biggest show of the year. It's kind of everybody's favorite. You'll get fans from all over the world for it.
Literally all over the world.
All over the world. What would be some of your favorite WrestleMania moments?
My own personal ones?
Yeah, or any you've seen. I mean, it's totally.
You making fun of me? Because I only had one WrestleMania moment? When it came down to 2006, I asked Edge to ride me on the fact that despite the legendary status I enjoyed, that I'd never actually had that classic WrestleMania moment. And so he put a lot of pressure on me, and therefore I put a lot of pressure on myself. But if you go back and look at that match, it's another one that really stands up. And at the moment that he speared me through that table that was on fire, even though I was surrounded by this weird potpourri of burnt hair, charred flesh, and blood, when Reverend Earl Hebner made that 3 count, man, I felt like a giant weight was lifted off my shoulder because I realized I just had that magic WrestleMania moment. And can I tell you what happened then? Like, I did not have a cell phone at the time. So even in 2006, I'd have to go into the crowd, and use the payphone. Like, put a hood over my head. And I called up knowing how concerned my wife would be about me. And I said, Ocala's Mick. And she said, is Edge okay? I was like, what about me? What about me? And then I watched it back the next day, and I can understand why. And Edge was like shaking, tremors, but it was a great match, and definitely my favorite WrestleMania moment.
That's fantastic. So I know last year you did the Hell in a Cell tour.
I did, yeah.
You did, and it went very well. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Anyone show of hands if you saw the 20 Years of Hell show on the network? That's 5 of you, okay? It's on there. It's very good. I'm really proud of it.
So speaking of tours, are you doing any tours this year? Can people expect to see you in different locations?
Man, you can always, I'm here. Right here. In Ocala, Florida. I was so happy. I mean, we set the bar pretty high with that last show. And now I've got one event coming up in Toronto before SummerSlam, one that's part of StarCast. So I'm writing down a few stories here and there. But I'm gonna wait. I don't want to sound all artsy and self-important, but I'm gonna wait until those stories feel like they're calling out to me to be written down, and then I'll start writing. But what happened last year, I knew I had this show coming up, and I swear to you, a week before the show, for those of you who don't know, it's an entire 1-hour show based around that one pivotal match from June of 1998, the Cell match with The Undertaker. I didn't have one word written down. Yes! And, but then once I started writing, I couldn't stop. The ideas were just kind of pouring out of me. And I went from thinking, how in the world am I going to do a 1-hour show based around one match, to thinking, how am I going to cut out enough stuff so it's only 1 hour, because there were so many things to talk about. So I'll do some thinking, and if I have ideas, I'll write them down in a notebook and maybe get back out on the road with a tour in 2021.
That sounds great. Real quick, just asking about the Hell in a Cell match. Afterwards, I don't necessarily want to ask how you feel, because I can only imagine, but did you know that you made an impact that 20 plus years later, people are going to remember you as the guy that Undertaker threw off?
No, absolutely not. I did not feel like it had made any impact. So much so that if you go back and watch the Raw that followed that pay-per-view, it wasn't in what we call the cold open. So there were no videos of that in the first few minutes. There was no reference to the match throughout a good 1 hour of the show. Shawn Michaels had come back as a returning guest. he mentioned the match and came back to me and said, well, those guys weren't going to talk about it. He pointed to the monitor at the announcers because I figured I would. So I am really fortunate that there was not social media at the time. Because I think if there had been social media, it would have trended for like 2 days and then been forgotten. And instead it picked up this organic momentum, you know, like a snowball going downhill and just kept building. And so I remember wrestling and being in main events in the week that followed. And there was I didn't gather any feeling that the audience felt like they had seen something special. But as the weeks went by, and then the months, and even the years, this match just started building in stature to the point where I get asked about it far more now than I did right after the fact.
Right. And then one last thing about your matches. How did it feel the night that you won the world title? Because there was a thing on WCW where they announced that you were going to be winning the WWE title later that night. And then you did. And it was such a huge ratings grab that it really started to shift the tone for the Monday Night Wars.
Oh. How did you feel?
Watching
it. It doesn't matter how you felt. I have to do that gently. It's more fun if I do it to a child.
We can pretend.
Yeah. So,
maybe him.
Can I ask you a question? Come on up here. Yeah, come on. Yeah, just stand right there. What? Yeah, this young lady right here. Yeah. Just yeah. Okay. What's your name? It doesn't matter what your name is. Then I give her money for making her feel bad. Easiest money you'll ever make. You know, it did feel amazing. Like I see Dave Pedger in the wings. He was there in WCW when it happened, and man, it was. We called it a war for a reason. You know, they weren't taking any prisoners, and at first my feelings were genuinely hurt. Like it really hurt me deep down. Until the next day, when the ratings came out, and the ratings showed that immediately following WCW, for those of you who don't know, our show had been taped. Every other week we'd be live, and then the next day we would tape Raw, and that show would be on a delay and air on a tape delay 6 days later. WCW was live every single week, and they had taken to giving away the results of our matches in an attempt to get people to switch the channel or not to go to their show. And for the most part it worked, but on that fateful night, evidence showed that as soon as Tony Schiavone told people that Mick Foley was winning their title, so there was no reason to change the channels, 500,000 people paid no heed to Tony Schiavone and immediately changed the channels to WWE. And so it went from being a bad moment for me that hurt my feelings to being absolutely the best thing that could have happened to me. So not only changed the way that I was viewed by fans to some extent, but in a major way, it changed the way that I was viewed behind the scenes by the powers that be. And it was like almost overnight, I went from being like a respected, grizzled journeyman to a superstar. So thank you, Eric Bischoff.
Well, Superstar, it's been fantastic having you here.
Yeah, you guys ready for a great night of action? Yeah. You guys are the top, are you ready? All right, let's get to the wrestling. Thanks for having me here. We'll raise some money for some great causes. Hope you enjoy the show.